Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to Talk with an Angel. I am your host, Angel McGinnis. Our goal with this and future shows are to be informative and engaging on subjects and issues that are important to you as a modern day teenager. We will cover topics such as drugs, alcohol, violence, and much more. Today's show, we are discussing teen relationship abuse or dating abuse. Our in-studio guest today is Tracy Arnold from Alakiski's Hope Center. Let's give Tracy a hand as we welcome her to the show today.
Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome to Talk with an Angel, Tracy.
Thank you.
Why don't you tell us who you are and what the Hope Center is and how your organization got started?
Sure. Thank you for having me this morning. My name is Tracy Arnold. I am the Supervisor of Prevention Services at the Alakiski Area Hope Center, Inc. What I do at the Hope Center is this: just go out and raise awareness, educate on violence prevention within the community, schools, to medical professionals, law enforcement, essentially anybody that will have us free of charge for this important issue. And the Alakiski Area Hope Center is a nonprofit domestic violence agency. We were incorporated in 1979, and we serve 2 counties, thus the Alakiski region, for those of you who are familiar with it. So we serve portions of Allegheny County as well as portions of Westmoreland counties. So we were started by 2 groups, a group from the Vandergrift area of committed citizens and survivors, as well as a group out of the Tarentum Council, a portion of Neighborhood Legal Services in Allegheny County, and they were incorporated in 1979. So our essential mission is the safe elimination of domestic violence through intervention, prevention, and collaboration.
Okay. Now, what is relationship abuse?
Relationship abuse or domestic violence, intimate partner violence, it has many names. Essentially, it is an intentional pattern of abusive behavior used to gain power and control over a family member, an intimate partner, or a former intimate partner. So key words, it's intentional, it's targeted at a victim, and it's about power and control over a victim.
Now, are there different forms of abuse?
Yes, there are 5 different forms of abuse.
Okay.
The first one is physical abuse. So it could be hitting, pushing, shoving, hair pulling, preventing someone from going somewhere, or maybe making them go somewhere against their will. There's also verbal abuse, which would be yelling and screaming at the victim. Sexual abuse, rape, unwanted touching, coercing the victim into doing things sexually they're not ready to do. It could involve sexting, coercing the victim into sexting, and then setting that out later after the victim has ended the relationship to be used against them.
Blackmail form.
There is also mental emotional abuse, which is common in any type of abusive relationship. So this is where that abuser really gains that power and control over the victim, lowering the victim's self-esteem. We see a lot of isolation from family, friends, support systems, so that the victim or the abuser has the victim all to themselves. There's also controlling what the victim wears, who they hang out with, what they do. And there's also an aspect of digital abuse there as well, so control through technology as well, through text messaging. And then there is financial abuse. So this is control through money. So that could go one of 2 ways: putting the victim on an allowance, or maybe withholding funds from the victim, as well as making them lose employment. Say the victim has a job and the abuser continues to show up, harass, and stalk the victim until they're fired from employment, as well as running of credit cards and bills and outstanding debt in the victim's name.
The last 2, I wasn't too familiar with. I mean, I understand that those happen, but I didn't think that they had an actual name for it. Does relationship abuse affect teenagers differently than adults?
It is a form of, violence is a form of trauma, so yes, there are risks. Teenagers that experience dating violence could possibly get engaged in substance or alcohol abuse. They could have eating disorders, STIs, and further domestic violence. Adults, right now we're seeing 1 in 3 women, 1 in 4 men experiencing a form of intimate partner violence. They typically have some of the same risk factors as teens, but also depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, a lot of medical issues, neurological issues as well related to it.
Yeah. How common is teen relationship abuse?
Right now, 1 in 3 teens are experiencing a form of relationship abuse. So it's 1.5 million students nationwide, so it's pretty alarming rates.
Yeah. Is that about the same for adults as well, or probably a little less?
Well, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men we're seeing. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Now, why does the person abuse someone they're in a relationship with?
What we know about abusers is it's intentional, so it is a controlled behavior, and it is about power and control. So what we see is that it's a choice to abuse somebody. It's targeted at the victim. Abusers aren't typically abusing everyone they come in contact with. Most of the time, they control themselves quite well socially. They're very manipulative. They're very charming to others. They can hold down employment, they can hold down other social relationships quite well. The behavior is intentionally targeted at the victim.
Just the victim. Can you tell us what a healthy dating relationship looks like?
Sure. Any type of healthy relationship starts out with trust. If you think of family, friends, acquaintances, professional, any relationship like that begins with trust. And what we know about unhealthy is there's a lot of mistrust and jealousy in that relationship. So definitely trust is really important in a healthy relationship, as well as respect. The ability for partners to respect each other, their differences, as well as who they are and what they like about themselves or just their individuality. Feeling safe and comfortable around your dating partner is really important. The ability to communicate. If maybe something that the dating partner did or said offended one of them, that they have the ability to say that and work through that appropriately, and that the other partner won't do that again to intentionally harm them. It's important when we go out and talk to teens that we also remind them that you're going to have conflict, you're going to have arguments and disagree, and that's okay as long as it's not all the time and becoming abusive in a relationship.
Yes, I mean, you have to learn to communicate.
Right.
You can't just have a relationship and not be able to communicate, and you have to feel comfortable communicating with that partner as well.
Absolutely.
And that they give you that type of environment and that trust. So what are some of the warning signs that a teen is involved in an unhealthy dating relationship?
Some of the biggest warning signs are that spending 24/7 together, being together constantly and not having time apart to spend with your family or friends. Those are some of the biggest indicators. That jealousy of others, the abusive partner will constantly accuse the victim of cheating or flirting with others, as well as trying to change a partner. We'll see a victim change who they are completely in appearance. They may have been taking care of themselves, dressed really well, clean, and they may just completely be different and maybe cover up more, not wear as much makeup, do their hair differently to accommodate the abusive partner. They may change what they used to like to do. They may drop out of sports, their homework, their grades may drop, they may not attend school as much. So they're essentially going to change who they are and become almost depressed and closed off.
Yeah. Now, do you recommend, if let's say it's a friend, and you notice that they're kind of exhibiting these signs, saying something like, is everything okay? Because I know sometimes that might make the victim kind of close off even more.
Well, I think the way you said it was perfect. Like, is everything okay? Do you need anything? Because I'm noticing you're starting to pull away. And I think those are really important and nice ways to approach somebody that expressing concern, because you're seeing the person drift apart from you, and that is a warning sign. Just reminding them, we don't seem to be spending as much time together anymore. You seem to be spending a lot of time with your dating partner. Do you want to hang out? And maybe just encouraging that relationship and kind of pointing out what's going on. You can definitely try that and see if that works. And just letting them know that you're always there for them if they need anything, and keeping that door open.
Yeah. What do you believe what are some influences on teen dating abuse?
It could be that just not knowing what's healthy and what's unhealthy. Sometimes that could, be a reason why someone ends up in an abusive relationship, because abusers are very manipulative. very charming. So it's difficult to say who is an abuser. An abusive relationship does not start out that way. It actually cycles through 3 phases. It's called the cycle of violence. It begins in a honeymoon phase where everything's going great. The abuser is very charming, manipulative, winning the victim's trust. So the victim does fall in love with the abuser, and this can last months, years into a relationship. And then eventually it moves to a tension building phase where there might be the control setting in, some violence going on, and then it will move to an explosion phase where the violence is at its worst. And because it's a cycle, it will go right back to the honeymoon phase. So this is where the abuser is trying to win the victim back and apologize. So it can make it very difficult to end an abusive relationship because of this back and forth of being that good person again and not. As humans, we like to remember those good times and stay in those good times. So that could be a reason because of the cycle and going through that cycle of violence, as well as just not knowing what's healthy, what's not, not having that educational piece, because it could be a teen's first real intimate or romantic relationship and they don't know what to expect and they think this is normal. It could also be this was their normal adult relationship role models at home. So they could see unhealthy relationships in their home life, and this could be considered their normal, unfortunately. So just not knowing what is healthy.
What role does technology and social media have on relationship abuse?
I mentioned earlier under mental emotional abuse is that digital abuse aspect, and that is stalking and harassment through social media or technology. So yes, an abuser will oftentimes coerce or harass a victim and even steal their passwords to online accounts, social media accounts, even phones, victims' phones, so that they can track, stalk, and harass a victim. And that's something we try to have conversations about when we go into and do presentations. We go into schools and do presentations with youth, is talk about, is it okay to give your partner your passwords to your phones or social media accounts? And we try to have those conversations about personal boundaries and standards, because that can be used to control a victim and stalk and harass even after the relationship has ended. Abusers will sometimes put spyware on a victim's phones, and they will sometimes put GPS tracking systems on victims' vehicles. So as wonderful as technology is today, it can be used against victims.
And I think for all that, it goes back to that trust. So if you don't trust, there's no trust level, then why would you? Because if you trust your partner, why would you need the password? Why would you need all that information if you actually trust them?
Absolutely.
What should adults or parents do if they learn a teen is a victim or a perpetrator of relationship abuse?
Okay. As a teen, and I'm a firm believer in it, it starts early. It starts early having those conversations, school age, as far as what's healthy, what's not, even with friendships, any type of relationship. And modeling healthy behaviors is really important. But when you come into contact with a youth that may be in an unhealthy relationship, having a conversation about what's healthy and what's not, what's expected, and if there is violence going on, if there is threats and harm, it's taking the next step and connecting with a domestic violence agency and safety planning, as far as if it's a victim, and getting the appropriate resources and making sure that person is safe, as far as if they're ending that relationship or if they're in that relationship, whatever aspect they're at. As far as if it's an abuser, letting them know that that behavior is not okay and that it's illegal to abuse someone and there are consequences to it.
Since a lot of teens confide in their friends rather than an adult, what can friends of victims or perpetrators do to help?
Okay. As far as victims, we always encourage them to speak up and talk about it. Tell somebody and not go through it alone, because this happens a lot. It happens to a lot of people. So if a peer does come to another peer and say this is happening, encourage them, validate their feelings, let them know this isn't okay, you don't deserve this, abuse is not okay, and then help them identify a trusted adult. Everybody can think of at least one person, one adult in their life that they can go to for help, for support if they would ever need it. So that's the person to go to, especially if these relationships are physically abusive, sexually abusive, and they're being threatened and harmed. That's when you need to really seek help and and go and tell somebody and connect with those resources like HOPE, us domestic violence agencies, to safety plan. We never recommend breaking up with an abuser alone. So that's when it's okay to call us and talk to us about what to do and your options and your resources. Never get in between an abusive altercation when two people are physically fighting. You definitely want to call the police. So there's just certain things that you will want to prepare for, want to know how to handle. Domestic violence agencies, our services are free and they're confidential.
Yes, because I know there's the women's shelter.
Right, absolutely.
As well for people who I'm familiar with those.
And if your friend's an abuser, we talk to them about being an upstander. And if you see it happening between a couple, don't laugh, don't feed into it, and pull your friend aside later and have that conversation about, this isn't okay. This isn't how you treat an abusive partner.
Because I know some people will say, well, it's not my business.
Right.
And they won't help. They'll they'll sit there and let that happen and occur, or like you said, they'll laugh. Right. And no abuse is a form of a laughing matter.
Right.
Since a lot of, I asked that question. What does a teen abuser look like?
Because abuse is a choice, anyone can become an abuser, male or female, young or old, it doesn't matter. But what we know about an abuser is that they have tendencies to target the victim. It's intentional. It's about accusing them of everything. There's nothing a victim can do that's okay in their eyes. So they're going to control through sometimes subtle ways. So it might be through what a victim may perceive as flattery, saying, well, don't you love me? Don't you want to spend more time with me? You don't really need to hang out with your friends as much. Or maybe I like you when you wear your hair this way versus that way. Or maybe you don't need that much makeup. You look good without makeup. So they're very charming. They're very manipulative. That's how it can be easy for anyone to become a victim. Okay. But essentially anyone can become an abuser because they choose that behavior. So it is a choice, essentially, and you can choose also to respect your partner as well.
Yes, because I know sometimes how they grew up, the environment, sometimes can be a trigger as well.
Absolutely.
It's kind of that cycle repeats itself over again.
It's a learned behavior, yes.
Yeah. Why do victims stay with their abuser?
There are many barriers to ending an abusive relationship, and I know I mentioned previously that cycle of violence, that honeymoon phase. Abuse doesn't start out in the relationship, and I always pose the question to teens is that, if you went out on a first date with someone and they said or did something really horrible to you, none of you would go out with them again. I think that's a pretty, general question. None of us would. We have our standards, we have our boundaries. That's a huge indicator. Unfortunately, an abusive relationship does not start out that way. So by that time, a victim has fallen in love with the abuser and they do trust them. So there's those barriers, to leaving the relationship. There is the fear. They've been threatened, they've been harmed by the abuser already, so that is very real as well. In teens, it could be status. It could be, well, I have a boyfriend or girlfriend, and, I kind of want to keep that. Or maybe it's just the expectation that I've never had an intimate relationship or romantic relationship before, and I think maybe this is just how it should be.
Yeah, unfortunately. Now, when we come back, we will have you answer some questions that were submitted from our audience. We will be right back after these important messages. Hi, I'm Angel McGinnis, host of Talk with an Angel Show. You can help me impact the world through your generosity by becoming an Angel partner. We'll be able to extend our reach together to further the gospel of Jesus Christ. As an expression of my gratitude for your monthly online donation of $25 or more, I will send you my Angel Pack, which includes a backpack, mug, and a t-shirt. Thank you in advance for responding quickly and generously. God bless you and your family.
Become an Angel partner today. Just go to our website and click on the donation link right now. Receive your free gift pack.
One superhero saved us all. Faster than a speeding layoff, more powerful than the worst disease, able to leap financial disaster. Wouldn't it be great if we had a superhero to fix our problems? Finding supernatural power for living isn't the stuff of fiction. It's available for all of us. Jesus' life gives us a model for love, courage, and peace today. And his resurrection gives us the hope of eternity. Join us at New Vision Community Church this Sunday at 11 a.m. as we learn more about God's ultimate superhero.
After the death of a loved one, you may be worried about the upcoming holiday season.
I used to say, I wish I could go to sleep the day before Thanksgiving and wake up January 2nd.
Introducing Grief Share Surviving the Holidays, a special one-time event that helps you make it through the holiday season. It features an informative video that shows you how to plan your holiday season so you're not overwhelmed by it. You'll also learn how to survive holiday parties and get-togethers, how to handle loneliness, and you'll discover how you can gradually begin enjoying the holiday season again. The Surviving the Holidays video features the wisdom and perspectives of 13 grief recovery experts and interviews with many people who've wrestled with grief during the holiday season. At Grief Share Surviving the Holidays, you'll also have the opportunity to talk about how you're feeling about the holiday season and what you've learned in the video. Plus, you'll receive a holiday survival guide. It will give you the ongoing support and wisdom you'll need this holiday season. To learn more about Grief Share Surviving the Holidays, talk to the Grief Share leader at your church and visit griefshare.org/holidays.
Welcome back to Talk with an Angel. I'm your host, Angel McGinnis, and our special guest today is Tracy Arnold from Allie Kiskey's Hope Center. And we've been discussing teen relationship and dating abuse. Now, Tracy, before the break, I said I wanted to ask you some questions that were submitted by our audience. Here's one. I'm dating this guy who's always yelling at me and telling me that who I can talk to at school and on my phone. I want to leave, but he said he would kill himself if I did. What should I do?
Okay. And as we covered earlier on about the forms of abuse, obviously it's verbal, mental, emotional abuse with the yelling and screaming. And it is very common for abusers actually to use suicide as a threat to keep the victim in the relationship. Not that you shouldn't take a threat of suicide seriously. Abusers will often use that as a tactic to make the victim feel bad and stay in the relationship. So I would first say thank you for sharing and talk to her about the different forms of abuse and encourage her to connect with a trusted adult in the relationship, because we would definitely want to find out more information to see where it's at in the cycle of violence, and call the Hope Center at 1-888-299-4673 for safety planning options and resources at this point, because that's concerning.
Yes. Here's another question. A friend's boyfriend has started hitting her. I told her that's not right, but she said that a man doesn't really love you unless he hits you. What do I say to her?
Wow. Well, I would say you are a good supportive friend for letting her know that's not a healthy quality of a relationship, and that is very concerning, again, that there is physical abuse going on in the relationship. That is a time to definitely speak out, help her identify a trusted adult to talk to and share that with, and connect with a domestic violence agency for safety planning options and resources. Hope Center, again, 1-888-299-4673.
And I've heard that too, that a man really doesn't love you unless he hits you.
Right. Unfortunately, that's
not the case.
not healthy. Absolutely.
And Tracy, I'm going to give you some common myths about dating relationships, and I'd like you to dispel the truth with them. All right, so here's the first one. It doesn't matter how he treats me because at least I have a boyfriend.
Right, and that could be somebody that maybe that's their first intimate, real relationship. Again, we covered as far as teen barriers to ending a relationship. Not a healthy quality, obviously.
Yeah.
You got to have standards for a relationship, and you want somebody that's respectful and that treats you kind and caring, and you want to be safe in that relationship.
He said I should have sex with him because everybody else is doing it.
Okay, again, we had covered sexual abuse, and that is a coercion tactic, and you are the one that decides on consent in your relationship, in any healthy relationship. And if you're not ready and you're not comfortable to engage in any type of sexual behavior and your partner's not respecting that, then that's not healthy in a relationship.
Yeah.
Your partner should respect you and respect your boundaries, especially when it comes to sexual behavior.
Yes. I brought it on myself. I shouldn't have been in his face. I deserved it.
Okay. And in an unhealthy relationship, an abuser will blame a victim for anything and everything. They're always looking for a reason to abuse. So it's never a victim's fault for abuse. It's never anyone's fault for violence. So there's nothing a victim could say or do to deserve to be beaten, hurt, or harmed in any way.
He only hits me when he gets high or drunk, so it really isn't that often.
Yes, and that's a common misconception, is that drugs or alcohol cause violence in a relationship, and when we dig deep we find that the domestic violence or the dating violence was already present in the relationship. Do drugs or alcohol make this situation any better? Absolutely not, but the violence and controlling tendencies were already there in the relationship.
A good girlfriend never expresses herself freely in front of her boyfriend and friends.
Yeah, and when we already covered previously as far as healthy qualities in a relationship, your partner allows you to be who you are in a relationship and doesn't try to change you. So you should be able to freely express who you are as an individual in a healthy relationship.
Yes. Now, how does the Hope Center help victims of dating abuse?
HELP has an array of services. I know, as you mentioned earlier, the shelter, we do have an emergency shelter. HOPE offers services to men, women, and children, and not just in our service areas, as I mentioned previously. Yes, every domestic violence agency has service areas, but we help everybody all over the United States, all over the world. We help anybody that needs us. So we have, yes, emergency shelter for people that need a safe place to go, because maybe it's not safe to go stay with family or friends because there's stalking and harassment when leaving an unhealthy relationship. We also have what's called a safety kennel, sheltering animals and families together. So we are one of 3 shelters in the state of Pennsylvania to offer this service, where a victim can bring in their cat or dog with them to a kennel adjacent to the shelter and stay. That way it takes out that barrier of having to choose to leave the family pet behind, because we find that 48% of victims stay or leave or delay leaving because they have to leave a family pet. And that's often a pawn that an abuser will use in an unhealthy relationship against a victim. So we have that service. We do this, we go out and raise awareness, and we talk to all ages about domestic violence, and we have violence prevention programming. We also have legal services in the courts and magistrates. We're not attorneys, but we offer support for victims. And we offer supportive housing type of programs with financial assistance for victims, as well as training for medical professionals and law enforcement. We have support groups, so we have so much to offer victims. And if we don't have the resources for victims, we always try to refer out. So we're very knowledgeable in the community. We don't like to say no. We always want to say yes. So we want to point people in the right direction.
And they can just go right on the website as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we have website, we have Facebook, you can call our 24/7 hotline. Absolutely.
Okay. And I was going to say, are there any other resources available to teen victims? But you pretty much kind of answered that and elaborated on that already. So where can abusers go to get help?
There are resources for abusers. There is Women's Center and Shelter out of Pittsburgh offers what's called a men's group. And there's also Renewal Inc. out of Pittsburgh as well, for support for batters.
Oh, okay. See, that one I didn't know about. I know about the Women's Center abuse, though. Are there legal options victims can take to free themselves from their abusers?
Right. There are tools, there are options for victims through the legal system. In the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, there is something called the Protection from Abuse Order, which, just to essentially break it down, is a piece of paper signed by a judge ordering the abuser to stay away from the victim, as well as no contact with the victim. So through direct contact, through family, friends, or even social media, they cannot have contact. Now, I will say it's not knife-proof, it's not bulletproof, and it is an option for a victim. So it may not work in every circumstance, because the abuser, it would have to work if the abuser is a law-abiding citizen, essentially.
Yeah, which, let's be frank, because my next question actually will be about a case where a victim did have a PFA. So recently in the news, there was the young woman who was attending the University of Pittsburgh that was the victim of relationship abuse that ultimately ended in her death. Is there anything that we can learn from that horrible tragedy?
Yes, that was Alina Shahet. And yes, our thoughts and prayers definitely go out to her, her family, and her friends. And you know, when you hear of these senseless, these homicides, it's important to remember that domestic violence is a serious and widespread problem that affects every member of the family.
Yes.
Every 9 seconds, a woman is assaulted or beaten in the United States. And, you know, out of this, it's important to advocate and educate, and not just when homicides happen, but every single day. And as parents, start early with the youth, model healthy relationships, have these conversations with youth, whether you're a parent, whether you're, you know, in the church, in the schools, wherever you're at. It's not just us domestic violence agencies' responsibility, it is everybody's responsibility to educate, not just on unhealthy, but healthy relationships.
Yeah, and it was very sad, and because I mean, she did take the steps. She had the protection of youth.
Right.
So this will be our last question.
Okay.
And what final words would you like to leave us with today?
Just what I was just saying, that we need help. It's not just up to domestic violence agencies. This takes everybody everywhere working together to end domestic violence. It takes conversations early with youth. It takes consistent education on healthy, unhealthy. It takes just consistent raising awareness, everyone being involved, school districts, law enforcement, community members. It takes a village, essentially.
Yes.
All of us working together and just all the time about this issue.
And being observant.
Right.
And I know we keep saying women, but you know, women can ultimately be the abuser as well.
Right.
So I don't want to just kind of seem like we're just hitting on towards the men. It's just that that's more of what you normally see is the men as the abuser, but women can be as well. But let's thank Tracy for carving out some time from her busy schedule to discuss this important issue.
Thank you.
Now you can check out my Facebook page for a listing of where to get help. And if you would like to be part of our live studio audience, join us next month on Saturday, December 2nd at 11 a.m. for our live broadcast. And you can always go to my church website for more information on this show or a replay on our YouTube channel. And don't forget to like and follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And I would also like to say, just as the follow-up then with this, that a real man does not put his hands on a woman. And this has been Talk with an Angel with yours truly, Angel McGinnis. I'll see you next time.